If Peter is right in which he suggests Donald Trump is the most consequential political figure of our time, do you agree with him? And what would you add to that?
I do agree with that. I think, firstly, if Trump had only won the 2016 election, he would have been an extraordinarily important figure in American, indeed world politics. This is somebody who had run for no elected office before. He'd been mulling for decades and teased interviewers and others about whether or not he'd ever swap business for politics. It always looked like he was looking for his moment, but he didn't see it coming. He takes one serious run at it, and he wins first time, smashing through not, of course, just all of the leadership of the Republican Party, but then his Democratic opponent as well. So if he'd have just done that, that would have been hugely significant, whatever your views about him. After January the 6th, 2021, I think a lot of people had the presumption, okay, this was a blip, a strange blip in American politics, and it's now in the rearview mirror. His re-election in 2024 makes him without doubt a historic president already, for several reasons. One is just the repeat electoral success in the face of extraordinary amounts of numbers of efforts to take him out. I mean, every single possible route was tried, and he saw them off, and he got the vote, and in a way that many of us didn't expect. I never expected him to get the popular vote. That was a sort of icing on the cake for him and his campaign. He's obviously a highly consequential president, and there are several things, I think, that it goes back to your issue of the big things in our time. I think there are several issues you just raised which clearly Trump speaks to. He is, and always has been since he first ran, he's the biggest, toughest, nastiest cudgel that some voters can pick up to hit back at the big things in our time that they saw going on and they thought looked like they were just going to keep sliding on. China's rise against America, China's economic rise, America's economic stagnation, so on. I would, by the way, I'd add another thing to your list, if I may, which, in my view, and I've obviously written this at book length, I think one of the big issues of the 21st century, which we're clearly grappling with everywhere, is the simple issue of freedom of movement in the modern world. I think that people have been wildly underestimating in the developed world the number of people who want from the developing world to come to the developed world, and what that means. I mean, the relative ease and cheapness of travel, the fact that we all have devices in our pockets now, even in some of the poorest bits of sub-Saharan Africa, you'll notice everyone has a mobile phone. People can see what life looks like in a better place, in a place where things, and that's just transforming everything. And that's one of the reasons, of course, maybe the biggest reason for Trump's re-election in 2024 was a reaction to that. We see that in Europe as well. A lot of political parties, governments have come into office principally on that issue as a counterweight. And so, yes, I mean, Trump is an enormously consequential figure. And as I say, it's partly to do with just the fact that he has smashed through everything repeatedly in his career. There's no, and again, you can take this as a criticism or a praise, but there's almost there's no trick that works against him. He's like a sort of a comic book figure where it doesn't matter what forces are projected against him, he has a kind of force field and can see things off. I think that already in this term, he's done some hugely significant things. The tariffs, the war in the Middle East, and much more. Yes, he's transformative.
What is it about him that you think is misunderstood by his enemies?
Gosh, quite a lot. I think he was more misunderstood in his first term in office than he is now. I think people have got a better sense of him, and I think he's he's more competent in his second term simply because I think they expected to get in. I think, I mean, there are lots of personality issues about him that people have underestimated. I think that in some ways, I mean, he people there was a sense when he was first elected that it was cynical, that he had basically picked up a set of issues which he saw could help make him win. I think that's wrong. I think that actually he has very clear, consistent principles, which actually, if you look back at his books and his statements, and back 40 years now, are actually remarkably consistent. You know, his statements on unfair trade going back decades are what he's been saying and acted on now. So I think he is actually a person of considerable political principle, and they're quite basic principles in some way. But it's like the old game of the hedgehog and the fox. You
Yes.
know,
I think,
he seems to know a few very important, basic and fundamental things. And it's not that he's faking it. Like, I don't think that his culture war stances are actually as cynical in the way that a lot of people think they are. I think they're rooted in a feeling that he has in my observation, the times I've spent with him, that for instance, you know, he loves America, he admires America, he doesn't like people talking it down, and to that extent, you know, speaks just naturally to the millions of Americans who feel that their country has been talked down in recent years. Um, I also think, by the way, on a personal level, I mean, people have underestimated how it just extraordinarily capable he has been of. It goes back to something I mentioned earlier, of walking through a type of fire that it's hard to think of any other political leader in our time having gone through.
yeah, he's been counted out often.
Oh, I mean, I remember being in the US in 2016, was it 2015, 2016, when he made the remarks about John McCain, a front page of all the newspapers. And I remember a friend of mine who worked in government just saying, he's done. He's done. You know, when you just can't say that about a war hero. It worked. I think of all the trials. I mean, I've seen this with a few political leaders, but none more so than him. Somebody who's able to be in a courthouse all day and spend the evening campaigning. This is a sort of unique power.
Do you think that in 2024, he won because of issues or personality?
It was issues, I think, and the promise that he alone could address those issues.
Whether it was economic, immigration.
Economic immigration, and by then it was so clear. I wrote this in the New York Post, but I was with him and his team at the Madison Square Garden rally, which I was covering in New York, and it was about a week ahead of the election, and I remember something that was just so extraordinary, which was that you saw New Yorkers wearing Trump MAGA hats in the center of New York, having packed out Madison Square Garden. And there were people who you'd see at those rallies and speak to an interview who would never have voted for Trump in 2016, might have voted for him in 2020, but would have done so secretly. And here they were in New York, dressed in full MAGA regalia. It was,
but also after January 6th, there were people who swore off of Donald Trump.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
And
to
then
many
came
of us,
back.
yeah. I mean, to many of us, it looked like an absolutely career-ending catastrophe, for sure. But as I say, he gets a few things really right. I think that when he talks about the border, he talks. Democrats, like the left-wing counterparts in Europe, quite often talk about having a secure border as if it's an infinitely complicated thing, as if it's an unbelievable problem you just can't solve. The Labour government in the UK talks like that at the moment. And Trump said, no, it's actually easy to solve. It's quite straightforward. You just have to secure the border, and he's done it.